I'm joined now live by the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, Conservative MP for Richmond in Yorkshire. Welcome to the programme this morning, Chancellor. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Tom.
An awful lot to get through, so let's charge through it. First of all, on the Governor of the Bank of England, I wonder if you are sleeping rather more easily at his suggestion that the number of jobs lost might be better than expected.
Well, you're right. The Bank of England improved their outlook for the economy compared to the last time they did that, which is obviously welcome news. But I think we do need to have some humility about the situation, given we're living at a time of unprecedented economic uncertainty. So our ability to be precise about the exact path of the economy from here, I think is probably more limited than it normally is. But look, even I wouldn't say sleeping much easier at night. I mean, the forecasts still predict a situation that is very difficult.
It still keeps you awake, then, obviously.
Absolutely, and even though it's better, it still is very worrying to see.
Well, in that
our economy's taken a significant hit.
In those circumstances, then, let me ask you if it is still your decision to cut and end furlough in October.
Yeah, so look, this has been a difficult decision and one I've spoken about. What I say, I think, look, if you look at it from start to finish, the government will have been stepping in to pay or help pay people's wages for 8 months, which just in and of itself is a very long period of time. And I think most reasonable people will look at that and say, look, this is clearly not something that can go on indefinitely. It's not sustainable.
No, but for those sectors, Chancellor, that are hardest hit by this, I mean, have you done an assessment of how many jobs will be lost as a result of your decision to stop this in full in October?
Well, if you just let me walk you through the process. So, but it doesn't mean that. So, in common, first of all, with many other countries around the world, their versions of these are all one way or another. Most of them coming to an end towards the end of this year. That doesn't mean that there's no support. So, we put in place something called the job retention bonus, which means that if you're a company that successfully can bring someone back from furlough and productively employ them through to January, you will receive £1,000. Now, if you look at the wage distribution of people on furlough, that works out as quite a significant economic incentive to do so. So that is actually that will make quite a difference, we believe, in protecting people's jobs and helping those businesses to bring them back.
So what percentage of people on furlough, sorry to interrupt, but I realise
we can't do a precise, we can't do a precise, and nor of the Bank of it. I mean, it's very difficult to do a precise forecast of exactly what.
So we're sort of flying blind here, really, aren't we, to an extent?
I would say we're not flying blind, but I think we're dealing with something that is unprecedented in modern history. So the models that anyone has would work. But I wouldn't say, look, even though there's, I think this is a more important principal question. Should you just carry on doing this stuff? It's also not fair to people, right? It's just clearly not going to be the case that everyone can return to the job that they had. It would be wrong to pretend otherwise. For those people, rather than keep them trapped in uncertainty of a future, and one future actually we know probably won't exist, it's better for them to look forward and for us to provide them with new opportunities. And our plan for jobs that I outlined last month, I'm here in Scotland today to see that plan in action. That's what that plan does. It supports and creates new jobs and provides people with those fresh opportunities.
So you're letting people go to explore new opportunities, or read that as they're going to become unemployed and the economy is going to hit, their personal economy is going to take a hit as a result. Let me just ask you about this isolation fee to encourage people to stay at home once they've been contact traced. Would you be willing to look at whether or not you would pay people, say, the same that they get for jury duty in order to stay at home for 2 weeks?
So we've already made changes to the way that things like statutory sick pay and all our other support things work to specifically cover isolation. And we actually did that at the beginning of this crisis because people have been asked to isolate right from the beginning of this crisis. It's not actually a new phenomenon in that sense. So the operation of all those support systems for like statutory sick pay has been changed to deal with the situation. And on top of that,
what about for freelancers?
Support we've put. Well, so for example, for freelancers, we've got the self-employment income support scheme, the second payment of which is due to come very shortly. That ranks as probably the most generous and comprehensive self-employment support system anywhere in the world. So I think there's that. Okay. If you have a mortgage, there are mortgage holidays. If you get some help from the government with your rent payments, we've improved the generosity of local housing.
So allowance. Nothing new is coming in effect. The schemes are there. That's what they are.
Yeah, we've put. I mean, these are billions and billions of pounds worth of support that last for this entire financial year.
Let me ask you then about the bounce
your
back.
council tax as well.
Yes, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I know that time is tight.
I know you've got a lot to get through.
There's a lot to get through. So let's talk about the bounce back loan scheme. Hugely helpful for smaller businesses, for medium-sized businesses. Unfortunately, some of those businesses might not make it through to the end of the 5-year term that they're paying this loan back. Are you going to be chasing that money from those individuals who have taken part in that loan scheme, even if their business goes bust?
So look, these are loans; they're not grants. So as we would expect people to pay them back, and there will be a usual process that banks will undertake to recover loans. That's right for the taxpayer. Ultimately, it's the taxpayer that's provided the guarantee on these loans, and it's right that the taxpayer should expect that people should, as they normally would with any loan, attempt to pay it back.
Are you worried about huge sums, multiple billions potentially being lost in the fact that people go bust as a result of taking, or not as a result, but after taking these loans out?
Of course, some will do. Right? I mean, we're clearly not going to get every single penny of that back. But in a crisis that is happening at enormous speed and scale, you've got a decision to make. Either you can be very targeted in your response, and we could have credit assessed every business and really only given credit to ones where we were essentially 100% certain they could pay it back. That would have taken absolutely ages, and we couldn't have done it. 1 million different businesses have taken these loans, and clearly we could not have done individual credit assessments on 1 million businesses. The whole point was we needed to get liquidity support to small businesses as quickly as possible, to as many as possible. And when you do something like that, inevitably you accept, what in the profession we would call dead weight, but also moral hazard. But that is something that you have to just bear when you're dealing with a crisis like this. I still think it's the right decision, but I think if we can get the economy growing again, if confidence returns, if we can control the virus through our local interventions, track and trace, then actually, hopefully, many of those businesses will be able to have a bright future and can pay that money back. And it is a very generous interest rate of only 2.5% and a 5-year term, the first year of which is free. So they are generously structured loans specifically for this purpose.
You will look to go after them, but you accept that you might not get it all back, as some businesses potentially fold in the intervening years. Let me ask you about getting people back to work, because clearly that's a big part of restructuring the economy, getting the economy back up. Boris Johnson, absolutely desperate to get people back to work, continues to plead with people to go back. They're not listening. What's your best argument? Give us your best argument to people listening now as to why they should be going back to the office.
Well, I'd say you said they're not listening. The guidance has only just changed this week, so I think it's probably a bit early to say the people listening or it's not working. And I think I completely agree with the Prime Minister. It's right that slowly we get our economy
but
back
they're not going to go back to spend money in coffee
that,
shops or to sit on crowded trains in the same way that they were doing before. Is this not? Is this arguing for an old time?
No. Whether it's going to a restaurant, going back to the office, I think people will slowly see as they return to old habits that actually we can do all these things safely. And I'm sure you've been out. I hope you've been out. And if you've been to a restaurant, or to a shop, it's a very different experience. There are screens up. There are one-way systems. You're not ordering with menus. You're using an app. Things are spaced further apart. There are limits to how many people can be in the store at any one time, etc. There's queuing. So all of these things are the new normal, and that's what should give people confidence.
You don't see the new normal as being having more people working from home rather than working in the office. That's not a new normal you want to contemplate because it's too damaging to the economy.
Well, no. That might be. I mean, we don't know yet. I think it's very early. Yeah. It's very early to say what the long-term structural impact of all of this is. But we're clearly, at a time when everyone who can be working from home has been working at home, we need to kind of first just get back to back to most people being in the office again as normal, and that's good. This is not this is not us going telling people, you must get back. This is good. This is good for businesses. It's good for people, right? We can't. I think most office environments, it's one thing if you already know everybody and you all go away for a few months and work from home. But most businesses have lots of new people coming and joining and other people leaving. In order to create the strong culture that most businesses need, and you want in your workplace to know your colleagues, to be able to work productively with them, part of that involves getting to know them. And as new people come and go, it's very hard to do that over Zoom and Teams. Yeah. That physical contact, that being in the same place is actually good for people's development. It's good for what they're doing at work, and I think that actually, bit by bit, we need to get back to that.
Clearly, the world is changing very fast, as you know. You're at the forefront of it. Let me just come to a story on the front page of the Financial Times regarding TikTok and Chinese investment in various things like Huawei and businesses up and down the country. Is it still the government's decision to allow the Chinese state-owned China General Nuclear and France's EDF Finance to build a nuclear power point at Bradwell in Essex?
So on nuclear, the position of the government hasn't changed. Final decisions haven't been made for exactly what new plants may or may not be required, how they're financed.
So it could be that Bradwell is scotched.
It is. The position on nuclear hasn't changed. Obviously, the business secretary is in charge of energy policy. There's an energy white paper that is due to be published, I think, but forgive me if I'm completely wrong on the timing. I think in the autumn, and that's where you should look for answers on our future energy policy, including nuclear.
Do you think President Xi is a reliable partner?
I think, look, we have I think we should have a kind of eyes wide open relationship with China. Obviously, it's important to us in many ways, partly as a supply of things and as a trading partner. But we should be eyes wide open about where we have differing values and interests, and we should be robust in standing up for those things and protecting ourselves. And as you've seen us done on Huawei, for example, where we've taken quite strong and significant action over time.
Well, we'll wait to see what that white paper says, and indeed if the government's position does change. Let me just ask you two very, very quick and final questions, because I know I've got to let you go. Is it right that the Navy are brought in to turn the boats back to France?
Well, I wouldn't speculate on exactly the right way to deal with this problem. That would be a decision for the Home Secretary and Defence Secretary, etc.
Would you feel comfortable with it?
What I can say is that I can certainly understand and sympathise with people's frustration when they turn on their TV or the paper and they see these scenes. We all want these crossings to considerably be reduced and ideally stop. We need to work closely with France. That has been happening. I can tell you the Immigration Minister is going to be in France, I think, as early as early next week to step up our collaborative efforts and discussions with our French counterparts on how we can jointly tackle this problem and ensure the outcome that we all want to see, which is fewer crossings.
And very, very finally, you started by talking about humility in the face of this crisis. You are deemed to have had quite a good coronavirus, if indeed anybody can say that about this situation. I wonder, in that spirit of humility, whether you think that at any stage of this, you in particular have made any mistakes when it comes to the support you could have offered people or the way in which it's all been handled.
Yeah, look, I think in the fullness of time, we're still dealing with it. So I think rather than sitting here and trying to do the post-mortem valuation now would probably be premature, right? There's still,
but I think the things that are going on rather than a post-mortem, because you're right, it hasn't ended yet. But you look at the schemes that you've set up, the way in which they're working, and I wonder whether you think, do you know what, maybe we could have done that a bit better.
Well, look, I think certainly on the loans thing, I've been very clear, right? We haven't had a system where we've needed to get government-backed loans out to a very large number of businesses very quickly before. And we started doing it, and we needed to make changes to how that all happened to make sure that worked properly and got the credit to the businesses that needed it. And that required me to look at it and see what was working and actually change a bunch of things because we were operating at such speed. Clearly, had I known all of that at the beginning, we would have set them up differently from the beginning. So that's one of the examples that very clearly we were learning as we were going along. But I think it's kind of you to say, but I think the reality is it's probably too early to judge how we're doing. Like, the reality is our economy is suffering an enormous economic hit. I think we have done a good job in the short term protecting people's jobs and incomes and supporting businesses during the last few months, and so I'm proud of what we've done. Of course, we haven't got everything right, but I think we've done a good job there. But the long-term impacts of this are the thing that keep me up at night. We talked about employment and the prospect of people losing their jobs. There's hardship ahead. There are difficult times ahead for people. I'm trying to provide as much hope as I can, but I can't protect every job. I can't protect every business. We are going to have a very difficult situation with public finances as well, which we'll need to tackle over the medium term to restore them to a position of sustainability. And I'm sure as I make lots of these decisions, people will start saying, well, you haven't done a very good job, I'm sure. So, there's lots of difficulty to come, but look, we'll keep throwing everything at it and learning as we go and trying to make the right decisions for the country and do things in as fair a way as possible.
Well, I hope you will join us on LBC to talk us through the decisions you end up making in the years ahead. Rishi Sunak, thank you so much for your time. Chancellor